guest today needs no introduction in the software testing world. He's the co-creator of the rapid software testing methodology and the book Testing Taking Seriously. He's my good friend Michael Bolton, and we're going to talk today about the current state of the software testing business, where we think that's heading, and maybe, just maybe, take a deep breath. We're going to talk about something I've heard about recently that might be a trend. It might just be, a passing fancy, but we're going to talk a little bit about AI because we haven't actually discussed it in public together. So, Michael, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm acceptable, as I uh, uh, tend to say.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm. Uh, it's a slow season, summertime, so I'm looking forward to music festivals and music camp and that sort of stuff. And uh,
Are
take a
you just
little.
recently back home? You've been out and about, haven't you?
I was away in Europe for a couple of months. Um, I get a lot of work in Europe. North America isn't as clever as as Europe is on the old testing and critical thinking front.
Mm.
And it's in certain places in Europe more than others, I might add.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll, we'll do an inventory later. See,
Okay.
country by country analysis. Um, right. So the testing profession. Um, what do you think we're actually in a healthy state right now? Or I get a lot of people asking me, what's going to happen? What are we doing? Some of it is, easily answerable, but like what's your view on the state of our industry as an actual profession?
Well, it's a mess. It's been a mess for a long time. It's There was a brief period somewhere between 2008 and 2012 or so where things actually started to be looking pretty good. And then it sort of declined since then. And the decline has accelerated, I think, since the COVIDs, right? Since the pandemic.
Right.
Um, and there's a lot of social factors, I think, that are um, running in parallel with that.
Right.
If you look at the worldwide situation politically,
Mhm.
socially, culturally, economically, um, it's reflected in testing. And in fact, in such circumstances as we're living in, uh, a big theme is that critical thinking has been asked to take a hike down to the beach and spend a few years there, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Um, it's tough, and um, it's really unfortunate, in fact, that it's that way because the essence of what good testing is all about is pretty much exactly what we need to get out of this mess,
Yeah.
and that is to systematically doubt, to look for trouble, to care about things that matter to people,
Yeah.
to use tools in effective and powerful ways rather than to use them to essentially accelerate and intensify a whole bunch of things that should not be accelerated or intensified, um, to extend our goodness instead of our
Yeah.
evil. Um,
I kind
so
of
it,
feel like on that theme a little bit, like to me, like my business, like working in financial services, like really kind of post '08 great financial crisis, there's like a deep, deep cynicism that really set in as like any shred of moral hazard, as no one went to jail and there was essentially really no consequences for that. That like nobody, and I think maybe if you combine that with the rise of agile and all that, mess that went around with that like it just seems like people just didn't care and put out a lot of crappy software quicker, and it's just compounded into where we are now. And there was like a brief moment where I felt like I use conferences as a kind of barometer for that. Yeah, I shouldn't say too much because I do still go speak at conferences, but the learning and the content has really kind of dropped dramatically.
I don't go to as many conferences as I used to.
Yeah,
Um, I uh, I'm not sure if it's worse or if it was just never that good.
right.
Um, there's still a big fixation on test cases. There's still a big
Mm,
fixation on demonstration, confirmation, rather than exploration, experimentation, finding out where trouble is. Um, in a circumstance, a sort of social situation where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of nervousness, people aren't going to be disposed to um, raise concern or raise doubt. It's better, easier to go along.
right, right.
Um, well, you mentioned '08 on a related note. I recently read The Big Short for the
Mm,
first time, and that
excellent book,
was
and a book that was actually made into a good movie.
the movie was okay. I found the book more engaging. The movie was a snack,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
the
They're
book
they're
was a
two
really
different, completely different things. I read the book years before the movie came out, but yeah,
yeah. Well, what I noticed about that was some of the things you're referring to. There's a story in that book of a guy who he had a job. He was getting a $10 million a year in compensation. This was not enough, apparently, for him. So he arranged. I believe he was working at Morgan Stanley. I don't have the book at hand, so I'm going on memory from this. But he was working at Morgan Stanley. Um, they said, okay, we'll give you your own unit, right? We'll give you your own a department to manage your own fund. Um, and part of the deal he wanted was to get $25 million a year. $25 million a year, run do that for a few years, and maybe you can put a little aside for your retirement, that sort of
yes,
thing, right? So anyway, he gets the job, and he promptly arranges to lose $9 billion on a single trade. That's billion with a B.
right,
So essentially $9 billion, divide it by 300. So you're talking about the kind of deal that, if my math is right, you're losing $10 million a day over
right.
a year. $10 million over a day. Okay. Well, of course, having lost $9 billion on a single trade, management goes to him and says, we can't let you keep your job. Sorry, the 25 million thing is off. We can't do that. Take 10.
Yeah.
It's like,
Hmm.
in some parts of the world that would get you a firing squad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you wouldn't be, in the kind of business climate that we've got these days, you'd be a member of the firing squad
Yeah.
rather than the target for it. It's
Yeah.
just it's now. How do we translate that to the current day? A big part of what was going on then with subprime mortgages, by Michael Lewis's account, was that the people who were trading them did not know what they were dealing with.
Mm,
They didn't look, they didn't care. The guardians, supposedly the rating agencies, they didn't really look either. And it was bad news to suggest that tranche of bonds was risky.
Yeah.
Um, and so, since bad news, who wants that? It's just going to
Yeah.
harsh people's
Well, and
buzz.
the rating agencies were leveraged into it as well. So,
Yeah. So everybody was complicit in this thing, and the consequences of it rained down on regular, ordinary people and the people who were most wealthy and most responsible
mm,
saw virtually no consequences whatsoever. Maybe they moved to another company,
right, right.
lost a bit of seniority. And that's I'm seeing that very same cloud formation,
Yeah.
no pun intended, around around the current fascination with what is a sort of quasi reasonable, interesting technology set of technologies.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
but
do you listen to Zitron's podcast? I mean, he
I
writes.
read. I don't listen to him, but I read his stuff, and it's kind of a litany, isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean,
it
it
is.
just.
Well, I mean, I read his stuff and then I listen to it because he covers a lot of stuff that's not that he doesn't write about in the between
Hmm,
the two of them. But
hmm.
he was just ranting about with a friend of his about the unbelievable levels of cynicism in this current AI and data center boom that just the investor class being like, well, we'll get a bailout, or the government's going to do something, or we'll reuse the tech somewhere. And his point is that, like, if you compare that to the dot-com boom or even the railroads when they collapsed, in the US, it was like people didn't know they were going to be able to reuse that stuff. They didn't know. They weren't cynically planning on things collapsing and getting bailed out in some way, and that this is kind of like the horrible logical conclusion of the lack of consequences for any of that stuff.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about the railways is there's rail, there's steel that's still down
Mm,
on the ground that was around 100 years ago, and it's required some maintenance and some upkeep, but it still lasts.
mm,
Chips don't, you
no.
know. Heat and time take their toll, and the infrastructure for these things is not going to be as sustainable as the infrastructure for rail. So that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Same with fiber, right?
Yeah.
Fiber lasts. Chips don't, though, not the same way. So there's a bunch of
And what they're building isn't general purpose stuff. You can't use those GPUs just for anything. Do you know what I mean? You just you
no.
can't
There's a
you
lot of
can't.
stuff you can use them for,
Yeah,
but not
I
for
don't
all.
know.
Um, I think one thing that is interesting about technology is that once you've got something, clever people figure out ways to use it.
Yeah.
So that there's a bunch of clever people about to get laid off, and some of the more clever, more inventive people, and some of the more cautious and skeptical people are probably the ones who are likely to do that, or
Yeah.
who are to be on the receiving end of that. So I don't. I'm not going to make predictions about the future. But it's always important to look at the things that are similar, but also the things that are different
Yeah.
about um, uh, this time and next time.
Yeah.
And it's also important to note that we can't reliably predict the future. But I forget whose line it was. But the line about history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Right, right.
The Odyssey is a big deal at the moment we record this uh, podcast. And here's a story that is what at this point 3,500 years old, something of that nature,
Yeah.
something along those lines. And boy, humans don't change now, do they? Uh, you know,
No.
they
Well, on
and
the
that's not even a story about the gods so much. The gods are. in the Greek myths, the gods are this wonderful dysfunctional family that looks a lot like families today. So it's interesting how humans stay the same even when technology changes.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you to, lightly predict the future a little bit or your opinion on it, because there's two parts to it. It's like, do you think in the and so we'll talk about AI in a second, but like, are we reaching the bottom of the obsession with counting things and automation in our business? Because with, people throw around non-determinism and all this stuff that they may not necessarily understand, but like, are we reaching the end of that? Because it's, you're basically, some of these systems are being designed to try to count to infinity, which, obviously is a hiding to nowhere. And like, if it's not that, then where does this end? Like, where, like, do you think there's still going to be what we recognize as a software testing profession in 5 years, or, is it going to be wildly different?
Well, as long as there's room for somebody to ask and attempt to answer the question, is there a problem here? There will be something resembling, uh, there will be work for such people.
Right.
Now, did you notice the premise upon which that conclusion depends? I think it's got to be true. And the reason it's got to be true is because anything else is unsustainable.
Right.
If we don't care about trouble, we will suffer. And if we suffer often enough and badly enough, and there is sufficient pain, humans have this tendency to sort of shake themselves awake and step forward again. Now, how long will it take for that? Well, there were warnings about climate change in the 1980s.
Yeah.
I mean, that's may not even be the earliest. It's the earliest that I became
Yeah,
aware
I
of.
think the 70s is the first thing I've seen about it. So,
I
yeah.
I think if we looked hard enough, we could find stuff even before that. People looking around saying, "Geez, this coal in the air, this coal
Yeah.
smoke is
It's-
changing things a lot, don't you think?" And in fact, when gas and electricity came along, coal fires, decreased because people could see the liabilities of those things even then. So um, the question is not will things change. I loved what James Lovelock said about climate change. Humans will survive climate change. Humans are a very, very tough species,
mm,
and we will survive. The question is what it's going to look like,
yeah.
what that survival will look like, and who the refugees are going to be, and who the victims are going to be, and that is really tough. Gwynne Dyer, another guy whose work I'm very fond of, points out that there's plenty of solutions to climate change
Mm,
right at our fingertips. The trouble is mustering the political will to do that. And a few years of put it this way, people may start something to do something about it when it actually interrupts the World Cup.
yes.
Instead of
Right.
having to just it happened to blow a little bit, so west of there that day.
Yeah.
But if it had stopped the game, then maybe the world would be horrified. And of course,
Yeah.
people are funny in terms of how they experience pain.
Yeah.
They can have people dying by the millions around them, but let's not cancel the game.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's true as well. Like, I was doing a little bit of writing about the other day, but like these reports are always like, oh, there's a AI job apocalypse coming, or like everyone's going to lose their jobs. And like, I don't think everybody's going to lose their jobs. I think some people will, but it'll be for other reasons than AI. I think what they really want is a bunch of people doing really crappy jobs. You know what I mean? Like what are those jobs look like and what do you get paid for it and who makes all the money off of it? You know what I mean? I don't want to be like a AI babysitter, for is that an entry level job now? Yeah, I think there's going to be probably more change, in an apocalyptic sense than destruction, unless you want to talk about maybe destruction of wealth or career opportunities. But I think that people still have jobs. They're just going to be crappy ones.
No, yeah, maybe. Um, Maybe there'll be great jobs, but with not very much money. I mean, in a way, testing is like that, isn't it? It's always been like that. Testing, from my perspective, has always been a pretty good job,
Yeah,
in terms of the fact that we're getting paid to learn stuff on behalf of other people. What is in reasonable dispute is what people are willing to pay for that. And
right.
as far as I'm concerned, here's a radical thing. I believe that the entry level job should be developer.
Mm,
And the job for old folks, the job for seniors should be testers because they've been around, right? It's silly, I think, to treat a testing as an entry level job because part of what we need as testers is a little bit of experience in the world.
mm.
Now, I came into this as a kind of second career. You wouldn't believe, as a program uh, manager after I was a kids theater stage manager, uh, taking actors from school to school in a kids show. But you wouldn't believe how that prepares you for managing a software development project. You got to something has to happen on a certain day, and the curtain has to go up, or the software has to get shipped. There's deadlines. There's very creative and very sometimes temperamental people involved. So a certain degree of life experience, but also a degree of software
Right.
experience in how things can go wrong, and experience in how to learn and craft tools. Now, of course, if you're an entry level tester, it's a really, really good idea to learn something about code. It's
Mm,
a really good idea to learn something about to learn to code if
yeah.
that floats your boat. But if it doesn't, there's lots of other things that you can do. One thing we have no shortage of in this business is code.
Exactly.
Or fast functional code.
But I was just thinking the other day, that's what we needed was more code upon code and more shadow systems on top of other systems. I mean, I don't think we produce enough stuff as an
Uh,
industry.
I, I'm hearing a hint of irony somewhere in the air, or of even sarcasm. No, it's well. Here's another thing that we don't need more of is confidence.
Mm. That's actually on my list. I didn't know if you wanted to get into it or not, but like, that is another good heuristic for how close we're, touching the bullshit void is the resurgence and how frequently I see the word confidence in things. It's, we need release confidence, this confidence, that confidence. That to me, that's kind of the last bastion of people who don't know what they're doing is trying to, instill confidence in people. Because if there's not something that is base level goal displacement, it's trying to, you know, build things to make you confident about something. And, I'm sure I'm probably going to get flamed all over the place for that. But like that is just a great heuristic of we are on the wrong path in
I I
testing, in
would
testing.
I would confidently agree with that. I look, the whole reason to test something is not to build confidence in it. Dang it.
Right.
It's to find out where confidence is unwarranted, where we're
Yeah.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
If I go to a doctor, the last thing I want to hear from the doctor is everything's fine.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're in good shape. I mean, it's just not
Yeah.
sensible to or our uh, friend James Bach has a nice little riddle. What's the difference between a doctor and a drug dealer? And the answer is one
Oh,
wants
wait a
to
minute.
make
In what
sure that the
country? Are you in
field
the US or are you somewhere else?
doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. What's the difference between a doctor and a drug dealer? One of them wants you to be happy all the time, and the other one is a doctor.
Yeah. I see,
It's
and that's why I always say, like, people who say that stuff, the two things. One, I don't think they've actually really tested things, and I mean that like really gotten into the guts of testing and lived that testing life like we know it is. And two, they don't um have had to live with the consequences of those types of decisions or their release decisions or saying that because in one of the things, I don't know a lot is true, but like uncertainty is a feature of testing. It's not a bug, right? It's like that's to me, that's like one of the things that good testing has is uncertainty. I don't want just confirmation bias. I don't want people just telling me things that, what I'm saying? Being uncertain about stuff is I want to know what the level of uncertainty is, not the level of confidence. Yeah, and I think if you haven't had to do that, it's again, it sounds like a great idea. You know what I mean? But like in practical terms, it's getting you the wrong result.
Yeah, I agree. It's I remember your previous QR podcast with Jerry Weinberg. Well, people want to be uh, confident. It's not wrong for people to want stuff.
Mm.
It's not wrong for people to want stuff at all. And I remember him saying, says, I would like to be able to flap my arms, me, Michael, I'd love to be able to flap my arms and get down to downtown Toronto. It's that way. It's about 5 miles, 8 kilometers. Now my window's right here. Open it up, flap my arms, fly right down there. Wouldn't that be wonderful? I mean, wouldn't that be great? What would be
Yeah.
wrong with that? And
Who wouldn't want that?
nothing wrong with wanting to do that. It's just a little unrealistic to expect to get it. And I remember at one point, uh, I think this was off my own bat, but the job of a tester is to remain professionally uncertain
Mm.
when everybody else around is sure.
Yeah.
Right? That helps me to defend people against being fooled.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to be fooled. I don't want them to fool themselves. When I was a program manager, the last thing I wanted for it was for a tester to say, well, we've looked as a program manager, and I thought, you cannot say that everything's great. It's got to be not great for somebody.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be not great for somebody. Who's it going to be not great for?
And if you hear
And
that, your mind should go towards, okay, well, what didn't we look at? What depth did we look at things? Where did like but there's so much about the way, you know, testing is positioned in organizations and the commodification of it and how people are trained that there's this like I want to be everybody's friend. I don't want to be viewed. I was listening to a podcast today and they were talking about, well, testing's back to being the bottleneck, and it's like just completely misunderstanding what the role is, and the thing that drives me crazy about the new the new resurgence of the confidence in everything, right? And it's everywhere. It's not just a select group of people. All the vendors are saying it again. Is that in the context of AI, there's the idea behind it, and I've read all the stuff on it. Is like we're supposed to trust something, the less we know about it. Your confidence level is supposed to go up the less you know about something, because you're laying on layers of AI and opaqueness and everything else and learning to trust the AI, which is just completely nuts to me. Like that seems to be completely inverse. I want to know more about something before I trust something, not less. But that's the pill you're being asked to swallow with the current
Yeah.
flavor.
Yeah, well, it's I mean, all the way along the and this again is from James. Many years ago, maybe a dozen years ago or more, he was saying that what passes for so-called test automation these days amounts to an elaborate conspiracy to make sure that nobody sets eyes or hands on the product.
We're gonna make sure nobody looks at this thing.
Let's disengage. Let's make sure that we don't take too close a look at it. And I mean, how really, how does that help?
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to help the business to identify risk, things
Mm,
that will gore the ox of the business or its clients or its customers. And earlier you were saying, what have we not looked at? And my uh, extension of that would be, who have we not looked for? On
right.
whose behalf are we forgetting to look?
Hmm.
How is this going to affect? A perfect example of this to me. I remember people touting the whole team approach.
Mm,
I remember that. Remember that this is
yes.
a big deal a few years ago, whole team approach. And having been on whole teams many times before, and having been, especially through my formative years at Quarterdeck, I remember how important the customer service people were to the
Right.
developers and to the testers. All of the testers, almost without exception, not quite all of them, almost all of them came through the technical support department.
Hmm.
They came through the technical support department because they were immersed in trouble and
Right.
what mattered to people, what mattered to customers. And I remember a key motivator for testers um, at that company was find anything that's going to make a phone ring.
Right.
Because in those days there were people on the phones for to do customer service. Find anything that's going to make the phone ring. The phone queues, we all know, are longer than we want them to be. People have to wait too long. They have to wait on hold. This was after the days of 1-800 support, which WordPerfect famously offered for a while, and
Right.
it was legendary. That hey, we care so much about the quality of our product that we'll foot the bill if you're having problems with it. Imagine that,
Right. Right.
you know. So anyway, uh, I asked some whole team uh, approach proponents. So when you say that, are the customer support people going to be in on those whole team approach style meetings? And the answer I got back was hilarious. It was, no, we mean the development team.
Yeah.
You know, well, okay.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about it seemed to me so much the antithesis of what I think I think Agile either was or should have been, which is, hey, if you're going to have customer representatives, if you're going to have people representing the customer, let's have the customer support. Let's have an actual customer, an on-site customer. That was a premise, but a lot of the time, mass market commercial software, you can't have them all in.
Yeah.
So at least let's have people from that constituency, from the technical support constituency. Let's have the testers in, because the whole team approach in the testing business is always about, can the testers go to these
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings? Which is not, none of this is unreasonable, right?
Yeah.
That's not unreasonable. I think it is unreasonable for the testers to say, okay, now that we're in, screw everybody else, forget it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I want the sales and marketing people to be involved in the development of a product to a significant degree, at least, so we can say to them, "That's a great idea, but not yet.
Yeah.
Look at the
Yeah. Yeah.
queue of ideas that you've given us, and look at the amount of time that we have to understand what we're building, so that we can give it to you in good shape."
Mm.
So let us know what you like. We'll tell you the order in which you can get it. And let's all learn to understand each other and respect each other's needs and desires. And then, it's never going to be perfect. The things would be better if we thought that way, it seems to me.
See, I think I agree with that. And I think some of the devaluation of testing and what happened it is I do blame the agilistas and all the I guess the view that test automation is more important than actual testing or that they're you know what I'm saying, so it's like the automation of testing and all the coding that they do that or the automating of checks is what we are really
Thank
meant to
you.
be doing. So, there you go. Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah. No,
But
cheers. No, no,
you know what I'm saying? So like
great.
that is like more important than actually testing software. And so that's why I feel like a change that's going to happen in our business is that whole industry, right? One, I view it as completely in disarray right now, is that is going to get the big pieces taken out of it. So if you look at like where it's like the stuff that comes out of Anthropic about Claude code and all the stuff that they do, right? And how, they don't do anything new model after model, but they do get slightly better in some of the parameters and tests and things like that. My view on this is that like, so if you're looking at, test automation as an opportunity to compress the lines between error injection and error detection. So if you're making a functional you coding problem or something like that, or functional error that you can put into a check, Claude just generates all that stuff now anyway, right? And it's instrumented and commented and all the other thing. It's not your gigantic test automation framework spaghetti code mess that's never been maintained or anything else. So that compression is going to happen. That work's going away. It's not just like, oh, okay, well, we don't need these people. I think as Claude code gets better, or or Codex gets better, they're going to have all that built into it. And so if your only reason for being is to write automated checks, you're in a bad spot right now, because that whole and the vendors are actively trying to solve that problem of just injecting that as at runtime or at build, or when you do a PR, it just spits out all that automation checks anyway. And I think that's going to be a big shift in our business, and those folks are going to be displaced because they were told that's what testing is. All the technical and maintenance of writing automated tests. And I think that if that's all you know about this business, you're going to be in a tough spot in a few years, if not sooner.
Well, I think, yeah, I think we're now seeing a sort of acceleration of something which is interesting. I'm still trying to work out how I think about it. But for the longest time, it seems to me that automated checking by delegates, people who were delegated to do that work,
Mm,
was just the wrong way to think about it. My contention has always been with the original, the agilists, right? The ones who really actually, I think, did have their heads and their hearts in the right place. That is to say, the ones who said, hey, as programmers, we've got to start taking responsibility for the quality of our work. Um, so those programmers, and I'm thinking of people like Ward Cunningham.
mm,
I'm thinking of people like my friend J.B. Rainsberger,
mm,
the people
mm.
who were saying, when programmers heard about the fact that they really ought to be testing their code at a low level themselves, the response from some programmers was, where are we going to find time for all this extra work?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was JB who responded, it's not extra work. It's just work you've been getting away with not doing.
Mm,
You know? So, um, I remember in grade school, check your work before you submit your paper. That was
Mm.
a principle that the sharp students managed to apply when they were doing an exam or a term paper and stuff like that. So I'm interested in observing how that's going to play out now that it's easier for developers to create a unit check super quickly. Um, Maybe that's interesting. On the other hand, if it becomes a sort of rote pro forma thing, well, I get the system to generate a bunch of code. I'm going to get this system to generate a bunch of code that checks the output from that code. When that turns into prompt and pray,
Mm.
um, we're probably not going to get that much farther. Um, but you know, one possible future. I try not to talk about the future. I try to talk about possible futures. One possible future is that the recognition of unreliability will prompt some critical thinking about output. There's already some signs, and some people are upset about this. There's lots of programmers now saying, well, writing code was never what most of what I did. And there's a semantic issue there. I think such programmers are talking about typing code
Mm. Right.
in the same way that, for me, for James and me writing a book, if we just talked about how long it would take to type it, that was next to nothing.
Right.
How long it took to argue about it,
Right.
that's what the time. And but then, my contention is that that's time well spent.
Yeah.
Time well spent. That's time when we reflect on what we've written. It's time when we check our references. It's time when we realize, oh wait, are we actually in agreement about this, or is it shallow agreement? Then we would go out and check things in the literature that we found fascinating. For example, this is one of my favorite things, and it's in our chapter on testing AI. Oh, I mean, testing magic. We realized we couldn't write a chapter on testing AI. It would be out of date before the ink was dry. But Malinowski, the sort of proto anthropologist, went and visited the Trobriand Islanders, and he found that every time they built a boat, they invoked magic. And so people who looked at these accounts later on said, oh, these idiot, primitive societies relying on magic. When we looked a little closely, what we found was that Malinowski pointed out that they said they realized that no amount of magic could compensate for poor craftsmanship.
Fair enough.
So let's not uh, let's not delegate stuff to the magical parts. And AI stuff is highly magical as we define it. A magic box is magical to the degree that its behavior is neither controlled nor understood nor otherwise known to be safe.
Mm.
So we have to, it seems to me, to be responsible, we've got to do a bunch of things. We've got to not depend on magic. If we have no other way of getting something, if something matters a lot and we have no other way of getting it, well, we might as well try magic. But we should minimize our reliance on it, and we must test it. And if we're going to test it, we have to ask for testability. And if we can't test it sufficiently, we've got to disclaim it, distance ourselves from it, or not inflict it on an unsuspecting customer base. So I'm hoping that one future that we arrive at is that we restore some notion of social and fiscal responsibility to development, and a certain kind of tester is really well positioned for that.
Yeah.
But
I, I,
and a certain
I
kind of developer too, of course.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see, I love the quote that, you know what I mean, the incentives drive behavior, right? So I don't see
Yeah,
any incentives in the short term to make me feel like
not in the
that's
short
gonna
term,
happen. But what do
not so
you
much in the short term.
no, no, no,
In the
no.
long term, no, because the short termism is unsustainable.
Yeah.
And as soon as we get enough pain from that, and this could be generations. Seriously, it could be generations. But I look at
Yeah.
my daughter's generation, your son's generations, and I think, having grown up in this kind of world, I think they certainly, having been immersed in bullshit for so much of their lives, their
Hey, you
bullshit
commenting
detectors
on my
are
parenting?
well. I've and I know you have too. One of the things that we've both tried to sensitize our kids towards is bullshit.
Mm,
And I I'm I'm pleased. I'm proud of how well calibrated our kids are.
mm.
My our daughter and my bonus son, they have pretty well calibrated bullshit detectors, and they're not prepared to uh, uh, take that unquestioned. I obviously there's selection bias. I don't know how typical they are, but if you look at the stats, younger people are a lot more skeptical
Yeah.
of
For
certain
God's
kinds
sake,
of
how
technology.
could they not be?
Yeah, well, easy, which is you give them enough soma,
Yeah.
you give people enough stuff to make them go to sleep, and that's a way for them not to be. But um, I, I I'm remembering my uncle recently passed, who said of my grandmother, uh, he said at her eulogy, he said, "Well, Lucy believed in the ultimate perfectibility of the human species. She sometimes expressed frustration and impatience at the rate at which that was being achieved." And I feel like that myself at the moment. But ultimately, there are better angels of our nature,
Yeah.
and they're available to us. And there are these patterns in history of new technologies, most prominently the book
Mm.
emerging, and all of a sudden people realizing by communicating more with other people that the first response to that is confusion and frustration and undermining of the existing systems and war and so on and so forth. And after about 300 years, that got pretty well settled out, not too bad. And then all along, 1850 or so, a little earlier, along came electronic media,
Yeah.
various kinds, and now we are about halfway through that process. Per McLuhan says it takes about 300 years when the last person who remembers the last person who remembers what it was like before that.
Right.
So a few human generations. We're still digesting how communication and processing at light speed happens, and it'll take us a while to sort through that. Um, I just hope we don't.
On that the planet's fine. You know. That's
I encourage our listeners to look up the second half of that observation. The planet's fine. The planet isn't going anywhere.
no.
We are.
Exactly. Like shifting into AI a little bit more specifically, what do you, I mean, there's so much you've been right about on it, what and usage and everything else. What do you think you've been wrong about AI so far.
Well, one thing I've for sure been wrong about is how long it takes for people to get over the fad.
Mm,
I've been wrong about that. I was nervous in the fall of 2023, remembering history. ChatGPT comes out November 20, ChatGPT comes out 2022, November 2022. And in October and November of 23, the program committee for Eurostar and I were building a program for that coming June, so June 2024. And I was nervous because we had a sort of fairly AI heavy kind of program. And I was nervous that the bubble would have popped,
mm.
by then. What I was um, what I was wrong about was that it's a Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, saying that the market can remain irrational a lot longer than you can stay solvent.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Ain't that the
Uh,
truth?
Oof. And um, that was the issue in 2008. This again kept going back to reading The Big Short, was that Michael Burry very perceptively realized that there was a hard stop on this stuff, these mortgages were all set to explode
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
on a particular date or at a particular date. And so he was able to call that. Now, what he has said recently is that uh, that situation existed then. It doesn't exist now to the same degree, but he's short um, Palantir
Mm,
right now, and he's short another of the big ones. I forget, Nvidia,
yeah.
over a 2 year time frame. Now, maybe those options will be out of the money 2 years hence. I can't believe I'm talking like this, by the way. that I'm
Well,
talking about the
that's one of the
markets.
things I like about Zitron stuff is he just breaks down those like he goes through their financial filings. Like the math does not work out. Like how
Hmm.
and it actually is a really good article recently in the Atlantic about how horribly engineered all this stuff is, and it's getting more expensive to train models. They're becoming less efficient, and the amount of money needed to pour into these things just to break even, right? Something is going to pop.
Yeah,
It's just
inevitable.
unsustainable. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So another thing that I was not really prepared for was how tasty this drug is. I did a set of experiments starting in February. Um, I did a set of experiments on uh, data generation, and I haven't written this, or I've started to write it up dozens of times. It will come out eventually, um, but I want to do a super good job of it because it's so interesting. Um, in order to analyze this question, does format matter? If you ask a GPT for something and you ask for it in JSON format, are you going to get different results if you ask in text or
Mm.
if you ask in CSV or if you ask it to supply things? And the answers for that are really, really fascinating. In order to perform those experiments, I had to do something a little bit expensive. I had to pay for going out to the frontier models and asking them. I didn't want to pay too much, so I tended not to ask the ones that are on the cutting edge. And that was a little bit expensive, but the real expense was how much money I spent on developing the tooling in order to run those experiments and to analyze them. Um, and it was kind of like getting an electric typewriter having a non-electric typewriter, it was kind of like getting a word processor after getting an electric typewriter.
Mm.
Uh, the distinction between what you could produce and how fussy you could be about it it made it easier to be the tooling. I was using a Claude code for it. The tooling made it easier to be a fussy, and that's expensive.
Mm.
It gets really expensive, especially since among among other among other things, I was able to show or learn anyway in my experimentation was Claude Code can't do CSS either. Nobody can understand it. However, by the time I haven't done a review lately, but I spent on the order of $300 US
Mm.
on what was a very seductive pathway through analyzing and presenting the results of this stuff. It's really interesting how much fun that was
Mm.
to get the machine to do a lot of heavy lifting for you. Okay, fast forward a little bit, and I was talking to a colleague, a fellow you know actually, Daniel Webb, who pointed me towards the work and the tooling of another guy, Adam Tornhill. Now, you may remember Adam was on the, as you were, come to think of it, on the bill for Eurostar 2024, that same one where I was concerned about it. Adam has this really interesting tool called CodeScene, and there's some fascinating findings that he has used. It does a couple of things. It assesses the health of your code, but it also examines it from the perspective of the social interactions required to produce it and the turbulence of it. So it identifies
How do they define turbulence?
um, numbers of check-in in various check-ins in various kinds of areas. So how often the code is changing in a certain kind of in one part of the code versus another part of the code. On the supposition, as a heuristic at least, that if it's changing a whole bunch really, really, really fast, that's a hint that there might be a lot of experimental work being done in there. There might be a lot of problems being generated in there. There might be a poor understanding of the code in that area. Now, it could be a positive thing. We're trying little experiments, and they're not very expensive, and we're getting a lot of feedback from that. We're refining things, but there are lots of inferences that you can make about the state of your code base using this tool. One of the interesting findings from that is that certain of the coding models, I hesitate to call them agents. I prefer to call them services, just to take the agency out of it. But the code starts off being okay, pretty good, not too bad. But there's a tendency for good code soberly maintained to get better, and for slop code to get much, much, much sloppier.
Mm.
And I was doing slop coding.
Right.
I was enjoying the feedback from being able to see results quickly, and so I could get nice visualizations and nice graphical displays of certain kinds of patterns in the stuff that I was analyzing. But the code's a mess. The tool suggests lots and lots of ways of repairing it and fixing it and so on and so forth. But what it's going to mean in the long run is I'd have to slow down to speed up.
Right.
And that's always been true in software development. Now the acceleration with AI is making the speeding up without slowing down part so fast.
Yeah.
And Adam's research in this is showing, suggesting at least, that Bad stuff gets worse, and good stuff can get a little better.
Yeah.
Um, it depends on on this essentially the sobriety and the diversity of your approach to it. If there's too many people contributing, it's going to be a mess. If there's just one person modifying the code without help
Right.
or without feedback, it's more likely to be a mess. So that sort of stuff is really fascinating, and that's a kind of tooling where he's got an, a set of agents that are uh, aiding with the analysis and even aiding with the repair
Right.
in some circumstances. That's a you know it's like everything else. Every technology accelerates whatever we are.
Mm.
If we are virtuous, it extends our virtue. If we are sloppy, it extends our slop.
Yeah.
It
See, this is the
accelerates our slop.
this is the thing though, that like I got two parts to this. One is maybe more comment than anything else. Is that I don't like that sounds interesting, and I'll check that out. But I don't see, like, for all the expense and sacrifice and money and everything else, like, what's new? You know what I mean? Like, I see, you know what I'm saying? I don't see a lot of innovation. Like, particularly in our business, it's appalling that they're just like, oh, how do we take the same old tired ideas and apply AI to it? You know what I mean? I don't see anything new. And so, like, yes, maybe something like that where you can look at your code base or get a analysis or put a new lens on it that the technology was prohibitive before, or
Mm.
we couldn't do things like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's enabled something that we thought we could do, was possible to do, but didn't have the technology to do it. I get that a little bit. Some of the things you're saying were like, the speed and the velocity and everything else. I still go back to who gives a shit? Why? Why?
Why are we in such a hurry? Yeah.
Yeah, why are you
Well,
in such a hurry? You know what I mean? It's like, you're exactly right. And I just keep coming back to that. And it's like I you know talk to my clients and other people like, having a healthy dose of skepticism about this stuff. I think some people are going to get so far out over on their skis on this that, like, once
mm,
they start, like, it is still, tokens are still heavily, heavily subsidized. Once the
at one
real
to
price,
ten.
yeah, once the price, if we even know, you don't even know. They don't, it's so
Yeah.
opaque. You actually don't even fucking know how much it actually is. So, like, once that real cost comes in, man, this stuff is not going to be worth it. And I think you look at the stats around successful use cases, what's gone live. Look at all the slop that's put on the App Store and nobody's using it. They're just making a bunch of crap, you know?
And you're triggering so many ways I can respond, but let me give you two or three.
any, any of them, I like.
Not just one. Um, I don't remember where I was exactly, but it was a small town someplace. And I was reflecting on what I could see. One thing that I could see was in this small town, a village, and I believe it was somewhere in Canada, I'm not sure. But in this small town, there is access to vegetables and fruits and products from all over the world. Where, I mean, I spent years, my years from 4 years old to 9 years old, I spent in a village, 1,200 people, and I think in that village now, um, you could probably get sriracha, a Thai um, hot sauce, and you could probably pay for it with a handheld point of sale system. Even in a small village these days, they're connected to the web, and now you can tap your credit card or your phone. But then you look around at the rest of the town and you ask, what has changed? What else has changed? Has life got better in a other than that kind of stuff, has life got better in a significantly material way? Hey, you can see movies on your TV at home. But, we used to go out to movies in theaters, and that was a big deal. And what was interesting about it was something. Hey, did you go to Odyssey this weekend? Yeah, I did. Or no, I missed it. I got to go next weekend. There was stuff that we could have in common that we could talk about. Um, the work of a farmer is, no question about it, easier now than it was 50, 75, 100 years ago. No question about it. Um, Fields are somewhat more productive, significantly more productive. But how much has AI changed that? How
Yeah.
much has AI fixed it? It's still down to the dirt and the wind and the rain. And
Yeah.
when we've got data centers that are going to contribute to climate change,
Yeah.
the dirt and the wind and the rain are going to change your relationship with you. That's one thing. Another thing is,
That sounds
I
like
play
your,
Irish.
what do you call it? Your productivity paradox.
Are we actually more productive?
Yeah.
So, since you brought that up, I've spent in the last 24 hours, I've spent uh, uh, at least 3 hours of that trying to stop Zoom from crashing, trying to figure out why Zoom has suddenly started crashing. It happened after two things that I can trace. I updated Camtasia, and God love me, I installed Teams on my system to try to find out why a
Get a
colleague's
grip, man.
Zoom. Oh man! And since then, Zoom has been dysfunctional. Clean installations, getting rid of you know everything on the system that has a Z in it.
Yeah.
To try to get it cleaned out, and the system is considerably destabilized. And what could I do with that other 3 hours?
Right. Right.
Right. So I'm spending more time fixing stuff than I'm actually spending using it these days. I had this idea for a project, and that is for one day. I've started this several times. One day, just log every bug I run into. And what I ended up every time, I got into the bug cascade. The bug cascade is where you start investigating one bug or reporting it, and you bang back into another bug, and maybe it's a bug in the reporting tool or the recording tool, and now you're trying to debug that. And by the time you're done, you've forgotten what the first one was.
Right. Right.
Because just this cascade of bugs. So we where did all the productivity go? Mary was yesterday saying, well, people are just busy dealing with bugs every day.
Yeah.
If we got rid of that problem, then maybe we would see these massive productivity increases.
That's
The other
part of
thing
the
that,
enshittification cycle, though, of
yeah,
pushing all that onto the users, right? You know what I
yeah,
mean? That's by design.
yeah. The small business owners who are now network administrators, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
they
exactly.
didn't get into it
Exactly.
for that, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to run my wool shop, and now I have to maintain Stripe and
Yeah.
point of sale systems, and now I have to find out why this a bug in a bank system the other day. You get to the bottom of the report. The balance is wrong. The
Yeah.
balance in this report is wrong. You go to the paper version of it, the balance there is right. You use another Oracle, the balance there is right. And all this because somebody from some outsourced testing company who doesn't understand the actual business rules and is trying to say, well, did that result match? Then it must be good.
Yeah.
That's all happening. The other thing that was triggered for me was a few weeks ago, a few months ago, I was as I do, um, I was at an Irish traditional music session. And there's a thing that happens when people are playing tunes in an Irish session, doesn't matter what else is going on in the bar, lots of, hubbub, lots of noise, and the music sort of takes care of itself. The musicians, we're only there for each other anyway, really. It's not really a performance. But there is a cultural thing that happens in certain Irish pubs, which is if somebody's going to sing a song, we shush the crowd. We ask people, just could you be quiet for 3 to 5 minutes and just hear somebody's human voice. And every time we're successful at getting the crowd to shush, which is most of the time, there's this thing in the air, this moment that just brings people to the common place we used to have when we went to movie theaters, which is a bunch of people in the room experiencing the same thing at the same time, experiencing a live human performance. Now, this happened lots of times, but on the occasion I'm thinking of, I felt compelled to stand up. It was somebody had just sung a song and everybody was applauding. I felt compelled to ask for shush again and just say, can everybody pay attention to this moment and recognize how this isn't mediated at all? This is all the instruments here acoustic. There's no amplification. You just heard a human voice and you gave it the space to do that. You got over yourselves for a few minutes and you gave space for that moment to happen. And I thank you for it. I said to them, we got to pay attention to that. We got to pay attention to the times when people can do things with that sense of focus and that sense of togetherness, because mediation of music is another one of my gripes. However much you might like Spotify, just remember that there's not a single developer working for Spotify who makes less than the best paid musicians I know. All the developers who work for Spotify make more than almost all working musicians. Yeah. And that's a disgrace, because it's we're not that I begrudge programmers their job, but we're not rewarding people who are doing the real work. We're rewarding the middlemen. Why should a bond broker make more money than the working stiff who's out there doing construction work or baking bread or teaching school or acting as a paramedic?
Yeah.
I was in a conversation with a guy on LinkedIn the other day. He said, well, you got to look at these people take enormous risks. Oh, really? They're talking about the financiers, the investors.
They don't.
They take enormous risk. Okay, the risk of financial ruin, that's one thing. The risk of losing an arm in the meat packing plant, that's the sort of stuff that happens frequently. Yeah. Frequently. And so, don't talk to me about personal risk, but let's, eventually we'll get to a point, I think, where we start to honor people for real work. Yeah. Teachers, doctors, nurses, and these are the people who, proportionate to what they put into their jobs are underpaid.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that I really keeps me, people ask me, why I still work in testing, or I actually really, I like testers. Probably testing is an interesting job, but the people that I meet in testing are super interesting. And I love nerds. You know what I mean? People who nerd out on something. You know what I mean? Like deeply interested in something, who have really long attention spans, or maybe really short ones that they find things they're just such an interesting collection of people. That's one of the reasons I really keep going back to it. And I like using whatever influence or control to protect people like that. You know what I mean? And work for them and advocate for them, because they really do. And I was talking about that, MCA thing the earlier. they asked me like what would be interesting about, the award. And I said, well, actually, I don't really even care about it for me, but like
MCA, what's it? What, sorry, what for
that's
our
the
listeners? What's
management
it?
consultancy award. I'm up for an award this year. And so they were asking me
Oh,
about, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's not a humble
yeah.
brag, but it has a point that like, and one of the things I said is like, I don't really feel like advocating for myself, but like as a conduit or a symbol for like people who do, and I use these words to the committee, like we are the plumbers of a lot of the industry. Like we work really, really hard trying to find problems before they get out in the broader society, and they're underpaid. When things go right, they don't get recognized, they get their jobs commoditized, they get automated away, they all this kind of stuff. When things go wrong, they're the first ones to get blamed. I said, and
And
it's
the jobs get automated and they get commoditized
yeah, and
away.
all that side. So I said, like, to kind of like punch way above our weight at something like this, it's like it to me represents more for the industry and all the people who work in it and the countless wonderful people that I've encountered through that. Is way more important than any individual recognition because it's like I just dig working with testers.
But I have to say I've had a number of careers, software and not software, and hobbies, and it, I like working with people.
Mm.
And if I'm grumpy about anybody
I'll go to
or
Carlin. I'll
anything,
defer to Carlin on that one again. I like people. I hate groups of people.
uh, no, I don't even. Groups can go bad. It's true, but in all of the groups that uh, I've worked in, um, the patterns that you're describing, the things that you're describing, are common to all of them, which is people are wonderful. But I'll grant, especially as individuals, um, and sorting out um, social issues, trying to get to a point where we can live together and where we can be at our best and get the best out of each other. That's that's glorious. That's wonderful. Um, but um, I can't endorse the idea that groups of people are across the board awful. But but I understand.
Yes.
I got I
Yeah, he has a
uh,
point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's
Look, I actually want to ask
it's
you another testing
subject
question
matter.
before.
All
Go
right,
ahead. Sorry.
go ahead.
No, so
Yeah.
so like I've been, I would never consider myself an academic, right? But I'm starting to write this paper. I'm trying to, and I'm gonna have a couple grads at KPMG help me with it, I think. But like I've tentatively called it the human in the loop fallacy, right? And it part of it is inspired by I think there's only one left, but of what I consider to be the major test tool vendors. I've either seen demos, reviewed it, gone to meetings, played with it myself, their agentic or AI testing solutions. And it seems to me, and talked to a lot of marketing people as well, and I know a lot of these marketing people, that it all seems to be based on this ridiculous belief that humans can provide some kind of meaningful oversight over an AI system that's just spraying out tests and code at volumes that is actually physically impossible for humans to review in any meaningful way. Um, and so I think that like I was at one the other day and just kind of had enough and started publicly challenging this poor guy on some of it. Yeah, I probably won't be invited back. And
Yes.
yet
Luck to him.
the more you just pull up on the thread, the whole sweater falls apart. You can't like 10x your code throughput or PRs or what gets sent to you to test, and then suddenly say, "Oh yeah, I'm and in any kind of meaningful way reviewing the checks that my agentic system are producing," and of course they don't. And even really like what I would consider to be respected or semi-serious people in our business are saying things like, "Oh, you just got to trust the AI. You just got to trust it. You just got to give into it and just like trust that it's doing." I mean, to me, this is again part of the. I'm kind of going on a rant here, but like the whole
You? Me?
yeah, who would have thought? Like this is the part of the enshittification of testing is that these vendors who frankly from my view on the marketing discussions I've had don't know what to do to deal with AI produced code and can't assure it in any way that in any kind of like, traditional sense in which they've used those words. So they have to enshitify the industry to a point where like what's accepted as testing is just people, it's like Lucy, I'm going to really date myself here, but I know you'll get this. It's like Lucy and Ethel on the chocolate thing. You know what I mean? Like they're just, and eventually they're just stuffing them in their mouth and like it's impossible to do. So rant paused. What are your
I
thoughts,
thought you were going
Sensei?
I thought you were going to talk about Lucy and the football because that's the other one,
Oh
right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
different Lucy,
yeah,
the Lucy in the Peanuts cartoons who would hold the ball for Charlie Brown and
yeah.
say, "Okay, kick it now," and Charlie
That
Brown would
I
end up
always
in the
use
goal.
Lucy in the football with Charlie Brown as to the testing industry saying you're going to automate all these jobs away, and then they never do, right? Because nobody has ever been fired because we test automation eliminated a role. That's just
Well, but I think they do that on all kinds of levels, right? We present this, and just before you get it, we pull it away. So certainly that's part of the pattern.
yeah,
But the other is, well, we'll find all your bugs. Whoop, no, we won't.
yeah,
You know,
defect free.
or we'll save you time. Whoop, no, we won't.
Yeah,
So I mean, and that's not by any means restricted to the tool vendors. It's common to software and to all kinds of other stuff.
yeah.
We'll sell you something and we'll pull it away. Um, but before that, you were talking about what were you talking about
Human in the
before
loop,
that? Human in the loop.
the
Yes, that's
fallacy.
misspelling. That's a misspelling. That's all it is. Just a typo. It's a human is the loop,
Yeah,
right? Right. I mean, all the loops are human. It's between me, the producer of a piece of software, and you, the consumer of it. That's the loop.
right.
Humans are the loop, and there are tools. There are tools that are involved in that. Tools that once again extend, enhance, accelerate, intensify, enable certain kinds of things, but it's the communication. And this goes back to Kim Kainer's description of what software itself is all about. As you said, software, he was creating a first year software programming class. He went to the textbooks. And they all said software programming is a set of instructions for a computer.
Right.
That didn't feel right for him. So he worked on it a little while. And what he came up with is a software program. Software is a communication. Software product is a communication between humans and computers. Between several humans and computers who are distributed over distance and time that happens to contain instructions that can run on a computer.
Right.
You may not have said that happens to, but it's an expression of communication. And so it's the communication that's the loop.
Right.
And there are ways of mediating that communication, but that's the loop we're talking about. And we can't we can delegate tasks within that communication, certain kinds of tasks, but we can't delegate the communication, and that's where that is to say, the conversation, the value given, value received, time saved, time supplied. Those are human things.
Right. Right.
Those are human things, and we can't abdicate any of those tasks. We can delegate them to some degree to tooling,
Mm.
in the same way that we can even use tooling to extend our superpowers.
Right.
Um, but what I've always found frustrating, I went to Barcelona one time. I got really annoyed. I didn't like Barcelona for one reason. I loved it for every reason except this one, which is why can't every place in the world be like Barcelona? Why can't we have the aesthetics,
Mm.
the decor, the dedication to public art, the food? Why do people like that place so much? Because it's wonderful and it's beautiful and it's uplifting. And you go into the Sagrada Familia and you look at the fact that they've been building this thing for 100 years, and their whole deal with it was, well, I'll get done when it gets done. But Barcelona is an example of something that the whole world would look like. Now we've got all the equipment, all the materials, we've got all the stuff needed to create places that look like Barcelona. And what do they look like? They look like shopping malls in America, you
Poured
know.
concrete.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Or as Bill Hicks said, third mall from the sun. That's where we
Yes.
live.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could have that, and it because our tools and our media in the anything that gets in between this and that, those things are all available to us now. It is less expensive to build a Sagrada Familia now than it's ever been, but we're
Yeah.
not doing it. Why not?
Yeah.
Why are we not using all of this money we got flying around to uh, uh, uplift society, to glorify humanity, never mind feeding them and
Right.
housing them and taking care of them. But apparently somebody needs $1 trillion or he's not happy.
Yeah, that's a pretty major failing of society. But although again, and I know you know Nate Custer, and
I do.
yeah, he's a
Grand
great
fellow.
guy. Worked with him at Fiserv, and I was having
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
yeah, yeah. No, he worked for me there. Yep. And as he, very nicely said to me the other day, that he considered the time we worked together as the sane part of his tenure at Fiserv. So,
Oh.
yeah, it was very, very sweet. But he's a lovely guy and a deep, deep thinker. And I was having a
Hmm.
rant about uh, ethics and ethical AI, in my view that there's no such thing as ethical AI, and that as you and I quote the oh, what's that movie, Jeff Goldblum about making the compromises or
Rationalization.
rationalizations. Yeah, you can't go to the bathroom, whatever, without making a few rationalizations, and you can't go from your bed to the bathroom or something like that without making rationalizations. And
I don't know anybody who can get up in the morning without at least two juicy
yes, that's
rationalizations.
right. The exact quote. Yeah. And so I was saying, like, look, yeah, everybody, makes rationalizations to participate in this economy and to participate in the world. And he very, and I was being compared and contrast with Yop's piece he wrote about, his little manifesto he wrote about, if I'm going to work in AI, you have to accept these things, and the acceptance of working with AI. If you haven't seen it, it's really good. And in fact, what to fanboy out on somebody, Dagmar Monet reposted Yop's thing herself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So it got much more play than mine. I was upset about, but anyway, no. So anyway,
Oh,
they were getting compared and contrasted by someone, and Nate very politely in private. Well, the first was a little public, and then we had a private back and forth, and I responded in public. But he did rightly correct me that people are trapped inside these broken systems, and ethics are not absolutes, and that you have an ethical dilemma, you act, and then you calibrate from there. And that he was reminding me in a very nice, loving way, the humanity of this, and that he knows how much I care about people, but it wasn't coming through. And and I actually gave a talk down at Agile on the Beach a couple weeks ago about some ethical case studies that some of you are familiar with that I've been through. And I actually quoted Nate on it and saying like, that he actually changed my talk about it to make it more about the human side of this, that people, not everybody can just quit their job. Not everybody can just walk. Your people are trapped inside these systems sometimes. So it's a good reminder about, the human part of all this.
Yeah, I've always struggled a bit with that. It's uh, People live inside uh, prisons. Sometimes I remember that it's a title of a series of talks on CBC radio years ago, given by Doris Lessing, "Prisons We Choose to Live Inside."
Mm.
Uh, and to some degree, that is a choice. Or no, to every degree, it's a choice. It can just be a really hard choice. But there's another thing I wanted to pick up on, which is, we talk about ethical AI or not. There's nothing intrinsically unethical about a piece of software, right? I don't, Nothing intrinsically unethical about it. What might be unethical is how people apply it and how people use it. And it gets kind of tough sometimes to pull that out because, for instance,
Well,
the
I
whole
just to pause
foundation
right
of the,
there. I would add in big AI, how or Gen AI, whatever the open AIs or
yeah,
Anthropic sort of how it was built as well.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
right. That's the
yeah.
part to me that like there's no ethical um reconciliation that can be done for how
It,
it was
it,
built.
it was certainly a spawned in a poisoned pond, right?
Yes.
Right. Mary, in particular, is a graphic artist. Uh, what was observing this early on and watching with appropriate levels of disgust at how the works of authors,
Mm.
artists, musicians, and so on were just being hoovered up. But it was people that was doing it, right? It wasn't the the technology itself uh, did not do it, but it's certainly fruit of a a tree that was poisoned when the poisoners planted it.
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
So um, it because I mean, even the Gary Marcuses and the Emily Benders of the world can see ethical uses for machine learning models
Mhm.
for generative stuff. For example, here's a way I actually posted about this today. Here's a way that we use generative AI in testing chatbots. Give the chatbot a sentence that a user might utter to the chatbot. Ask a bit of generative AI to generate 10,000 variations on that. And you can do it. We Our little bit of tooling does it something like 25 generations at a time. What's really astonishing for even a simple concept, uh, tell me about the warranty information for this car. You can generate uh, sentences over and over and over again, and the rate of duplication, of exact duplication of those sentences, is astonishingly low. It's
Mm.
about 5%.
Yeah.
So in generating, you might only need 11,000 instances of something to generate. Well, there's nothing intrinsically unethical about that, seems to me. LLMs were originally created, large language models were originally created to help linguists and neuroscientists understand the relationship between how we talk and how we write and how we think. Well, there's nothing intrinsically bad about that. It's just that, when you get when the monster escapes the lab and gets, hired to uh, drop bad things on good people,
Hmm.
then it's
Yeah.
uh, a
I
different
mean,
deal.
there's lots of horrible stuff like building training models and exploitation of labor and stealing
Oh, good
IP and
Lord.
all like
Ugh.
that. But which, again, I think that's the kind of moral underpinnings of how I see it as an ethical failure. But like, I
Yeah,
don't think like you're right. There's nothing
didn't have to
intrinsically.
be that way.
It didn't have to be that way. You're right. It didn't have to be that way. So like, and to a certain extent, here we are. So
Yeah.
what are you gonna? I mean, that's for courts or litigation or society writ large to figure out. I don't know, but like here we are, and I think my point was like I don't like people trying to make ethical arguments about AI when it's built on a house. The house is built on sand. So let's not have that conversation. Let's have the conversation like, okay, what are we gonna do about it now? How do we test these things? Because I actually really think, a lot of testers don't know how to test these things and don't know how to do, they're staring at the abyss a little bit. And I had a conversation with a test manager the other day, and we were talking about Gen AI test strategies, and the conversation was like, well, I don't want to use that because if the thing generates a test strategy, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, dude, if your whole value proposition to this project was you write documents, you were screwed anyway. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
that's
It's like
that's not a great. You better be able to figure out how to articulate your value outside of document generation.
my tuned model can generate better test strategy than I can.
Mm,
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I'd be boasting about that.
yeah, yeah,
Not that way.
exactly. And this is, all the, you've heard me bang on for, and I think part of it was at that Eurostar talk I gave, how poorly the industry has serviced us as testers, training, tooling to actually do your job properly. It's just, as I said, hitting the bullseye on the wrong target endlessly. You know what I mean? And now we are literally looking in the mirror going like, do I know how to test something? Do I actually know what my job is meant to be? Because again, I'll go back to automation. If I drop that down to zero, the cost of doing that, because it doesn't even need to be better. It just needs to be at the same or even just slightly worse. And people are going to bite their hands off to get rid of all these people. So what do you do then, right? If your entire identity was in it made up of writing automated checks or you write documents, you know what I mean? You're in a bad spot right now because it doesn't even need to be better. It just needs to be a little bit worse and they'll get rid of you in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the
Sorry.
core. Yeah. Oh no, it's all right. It goes back to the core though. I don't think this is this hard if we recognize what we're here for.
Yeah.
We're here to find trouble. Do you have a strategy, a set of strategy
Yeah.
ideas for finding trouble? Do you, if you, it's you're going to need tools for some of that. So, do you have a set of ideas
Yeah.
for finding trouble? And is there a way to use tools to accelerate that or intensify that? If so, great. But the tool is not the goal. The artifact is not the goal.
Right.
The you know a, a 6 gigabits or 6 gigabytes is not better than 2 gigabytes. Is not better than 100 megabytes. Is not better than 10 kilobytes. It's about the idea stuff.
Yeah.
And the if we keep our compasses pointed towards finding trouble, exploring the land, in the landscape so that we can find trouble that matters before it's too late, then that is valuable.
Right.
That is valuable. Now, of course, lots of people say, well, why should I have smoke alarms in my house? We, um, I have to say, Mary is uh, very intent on getting good coverage for smoke alarms in our house. And me, I'm uh, like an idiot, saying, "Oh, what do we need? We never have a fire." Right? In fact, the two times we've had a fire in the kitchen, actual, flames and that, we were there. We knew what was going on. Yeah, but that's not what you have it for.
Right. Right.
That's reminding myself that's not what we have it for. Or the damn thing goes off every time I'm trying to cook a steak or heat something up in the oven. It's very sensitive. It goes off. It's interruptive, and so on and so forth. That's it's a pain in the ass to have to turn it off. That's not the occasion that we
Right.
need it for. We need it for that time when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and there's something, there's rags smoldering down in the basement.
Yeah.
That's the time we need it for. And that time doesn't come up very often, but that's why you got it.
Yeah.
You know,
So look,
uh,
I'm a big fan of RST, always have been, and I've been telling people, trying to up my, advocacy, that like you need it, testers need it more now than ever, because I just, there you go. It will ring. I had the bell sound effect there, but like, I
also,
really,
also
yeah.
that one too, right? Understanding deep learning. Oh
Yeah.
my God, it's impenetrable, but penetrate it we must.
So outside of taking an RST class, which I've been telling people I always have, but for a while now, particularly related to AI, you folks are doing some of the most serious work on it, and learning how to test. It's an imperative for testers right now if you want to stay relevant in some of this. If half of what I think is going to happen is going to happen, it's more important if you want to stay in this field. And excel at it, which you would do anyway. So outside of that, we'll put RST to one side right now and buying the book. What's your kind of final thoughts on advice for testers to kind of, figure out what to do with AI and how to test it, and some resources for folks that I can add to this. And
Well, a bunch of my go-tos on these things are not new. They're timeless. The first thing that leaps to mind is Stephen Wolfram's essay on what is ChatGPT
Mm,
doing and how does it work. That's a really, really nice primer on how machine learning models, but especially a generative AI, actually work. He lays it all out very nicely and very clearly and very straightforwardly. So, first step is just understand the technology. Now, if you want to go a little lighter, you can look at Rodney Brooks's IEEE interview, which was called "Everybody Just Calm Down About ChatGPT Already." It was something along those
okay.
lines. Pretty cool. And if you want something a little more deeply technical than the Wolfram article, you can read Ben Levinstein's thing. Uh, I usually like three blue, one brown. He gets a little bit into the weeds. But another thing that is worth doing, I think, is try to explain it yourself.
Right.
Make a mission of trying to describe this to other people, experts, and ask for feedback.
Mm.
That's a good exercise. I learn about stuff by trying to write about it and by performing experiments. Another thing that is worth understanding is understanding the multidimensional nature of quality. This is one of the things that, the quality coaches and the quality advocates and uh, so on. Something that kind of bugs me about the way they frame things, which is they essentially say, well, things should just be good. Things should be the way I like them. But that's, I think that's a misapprehension. There's nothing terribly wrong with that, but there's not very much right with it either. What we've got to understand is what people value and how different people value things in different ways, and how we must assess value and quality rather than measuring it. And learning how to describe that, the fundamental idea behind this, for me, is that it's all about relationships. Right. Quality is not an intrinsic property of something. It's about the relationships between the product and its features and its functions and its various attributes, people and their needs and desires and tastes and preferences, and contexts in which those things are being evaluated, the relationships between all those things. And so there's a sort of, you get a whiff of a sort of absolutist nature of quality, which means that to some people, no bugs.
Right.
But a bug is a relationship too. A bug is a relationship in the product and the situation and the timing and the context and some person's perception. So I would, and of course, risk is the inverse of that. Risk is essentially the danger, the possibility that some quality criterion for someone will not be accomplished, achieved, fulfilled. Yeah. So my advice for testers is to wrap your mind around that, and then all of a sudden automated output checks, while they have a role, because if I've done this, a little video on this, is one of the more accessible videos I've done, I guess. But it's quite straightforward. If a product system does not produce correct output, there's a really good chance that some quality criterion will not be fulfilled, right? That some need or some desire will not get met. Trouble is the opposite. It's asymmetric. The opposite is not true. Just because the product does produce correct output does not mean that a quality criterion will get met necessarily. And there's lots and lots of different aspects, perspectives, dynamics of quality that will not be captured by this check or that check or any suite of checks. We need to understand people and how they value things and how they perceive things, what they need and what they want. And therefore, focus on trouble, focus on problems, focus on the ways in which quality will not be achieved. Now that's annoying and depressing for some people because they want to think positively. They want to think, oh, I want to prevent bugs. No one has ever prevented a bug. I'm going to make that argument. No one has ever prevented a bug. They've only ever prevented a bug from going any further undetected.
Right.
That's the big deal. So they say, I don't want to find bugs. I want to prevent bugs. No, please. You want it? It's like a smoke alarm saying, I want to prevent fires. No smoke alarm ever prevented a fire.
Right.
What a smoke alarm did was alert us to the fire. Well, let's remember that there's again, it's something from Jerry Weinberg. It says, how do you usually find out that a smoke alarm isn't working? When there's a fire.
Right.
That's how you find out.
Yeah.
So,
And that's your job as a that's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you should be happy. Wait, that should make you like I don't want to it's just a weird way of looking at what your actual job is, to think like I don't want to make people upset. I don't like you're not, you're helping managing
Well,
risk.
it is, yes, it's true, but it psychologically you can see why people think that way. I don't be yelling about trouble all the time. Nobody likes somebody who's yelling about trouble all the time, and that's true. Testing is a socially challenging role in two ways. We're challenging the product in a social context, and it is socially awkward to be somebody who's saying, "Oh, problem here. Oh, trouble here." It's like think really hard and ask, well, who's your favorite movie critic?
Yeah.
But let's, I can answer that question actually, because mine for a long time has been a guy named Anthony Lane, writes for the New Yorker. Why do I like him so much? It's because he keeps pointing me to stuff in movies that I hadn't noticed before.
Mm.
Like color.
Right,
Now,
right.
I'm a poor movie critic in that sense, or a poor appreciator of movies, because I didn't realize how important the color, the color theme, how much that had a bearing on the movie. And then he also talks about the music, and he talks about the director's previous work and how this current movie relates to that. Does the same thing for the actors. Talks about how the movie, if it's an adaptation, how it relates to the original. That is what I think testers need to aspire to. Not to say this sucks,
Right.
but to say here's where the movie is inconsistent in some way, or it's not going to meet its audience. It's supposed to be a this happy, joyful thing. Well, how come it's filmed in these, ominous orange, dark red kinds of tones, and so on and so forth? It doesn't take very long to sort of soak that stuff up if you're exposed to it, if you draw your attention to it. How does this hang together is the big question for testers. Now, everybody's doing that to some degree. Testers are the only people whose primary mission is to see how it might not be hanging together, how it might be troublesome. So a real appreciation of the domain you're working in, getting interested in, here's a great example. I never thought that foreign exchange would be interesting. It took me 10 weeks, a 10-week contract, to find out that foreign exchange is fascinating. There's all sorts of interesting things about it. Code, programming, it's all fascinating. How people assess things, how they prioritize things, how they value things, how they're nervous about certain things and completely confident about other things. All that stuff is so interesting.
Yeah.
And then we get all these approaches that suck the life out of that by saying, "Oh well, all we have to do is get dump some selenium on the playwright so we can Cypress the CI/CD thing." And it's, oh my God, this is so divorced from stuff that really matters. Not that stuff is trivial.
Right.
Not that it's trivial, but it's not the big story. It's like, being fascinated by the investigative reporter's word processor.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Come on, let's go over this story here.
Well, I think you
So
touched on something as well, kind of like finalish thought on this is that like, and I've been talking a lot internally at work and with clients as well, is that like, with my, you know, bullshit detector going off when I start seeing confidence being used everywhere, that word being used all over the place. It's really, really important right now, I think, for testers to to get familiar with and listen to and talk to people who actually test stuff and who actually do the work, because I think a lot of vendors and people out selling things and people opining, my experience with them is that they haven't actually tested anything. They haven't lived that life. And when they start using things like confidence, that's a good heuristic for like, oh, let me explore this a little deeper. Have you actually ever tested anything? Have you actually tested software and delivered it and lived with the consequences? Because I think the things you're talking about, people who live this life, they know those things. They live those things and they get so I keep a little list on my blog of testers I pay attention to, right? And they're people who I know actually walk the walk and test stuff for a living or who have and I've experienced that with them because I think it's really easy to get led astray right now. And particularly in this kind of fog of war moment we're in.
I think it's been easy to get led astray um, all the way along. Um, on the other hand, there's confusion because the word test is overloaded.
Mm, yeah,
Um, you know, um, when we remember tests in school, right? What were they like? Put the right answer down. And if you don't put the right answer down, you get an X. And if you do put the right answer down, you get a check mark. But what we, first of all, calling them multiple choice tests, yikes, bad idea. But uh, what got lost in all that was the purpose of testing in school um, should be to examine the question, did you learn something? But socially, testing got turned into a bogus kind of evaluation for how well did you learn stuff that allows you to pass this test.
mm,
And that, of course, led to big problems uh, in the educational systems, and certainly in um, the states, but also in to some degree in Ontario, this whole teaching to the test business. Surely the goal of an educational system is to have people learn things,
right,
and what qualifies as exams or tests or things like that um, is a pretty unreliable way
right.
of doing that. And I know that because there's lots of stuff. I was good at passing tests when I was a kid. I had really excellent memory and had a good affinity for writing stuff that teachers liked, for essay questions and that sort of stuff. But it's only in later years do I realize two things I got A's on. One of them I understood really well, and the other one I didn't. So um, evaluation is at the core of it, and you don't evaluate somebody's qualifications or somebody's learning experience by giving them a multiple choice test or by giving them a yes or no, true or false kind of test. That even worse. Um, it, and it plays out in the evaluation schemes for certain certification things, which is does anybody actually watch you do the work? No. Imagine we had 40 automated checks for a product, right? And if the product uh, uh, had 26 of those checks running green and the other 14 running red, would we ship that product? No, I don't think so. Um, but that's enough to qualify you as somebody with a certain kind of certification. So that, I mean, all that stuff exemplifies bad testing. We haven't identified that as another contributor
Yeah.
to the monetization of the testing business, rather than focus on uh, the actual value.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
uh, are you quantified to be a tester?
Yes. Good. It's it's a couple more better than random, I think is the in order to pass that foundation exam. So,
Yeah,
uh,
well, yeah.
yep.
But I know I'd say interesting. I'm not hearing that much about it these days.
No.
But what I am seeing, which is really unfortunate, is all the slop regurgitated from GPTs on LinkedIn, for instance, because there was so much more bad stuff than good stuff
Right. Right.
out there. Now we're getting a lot of this. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to find bugs. I want to prevent bugs, or silly things on boundary value analysis,
Yeah.
which amounts to take a number, add one, subtract one, give the number back. Good, you're done.
Yes. You
That's not
passed.
analysis.
All right,
Anyway,
my friend. Well, I think we're gonna have to draw a line under it for now. Um,
it's always fun to have a cranky yet uplifting conversation with you. It it's been uh, a wonderful journey, and when we talk about this book right here,
yes, taking
one of the
testing
things
seriously.
yeah, I don't know if anybody else knows about the evolution of your chapter, but basically I wrote to you and said, could you, write us just a little chapter on your thing? And your response was, no, no, that would take like 3 hours to for me to write that. So what happened was we had a 3 hour conversation. I've spent 3 weeks editing it, and the title of that, I forget exactly what the title is. I think it's
How management sees testing.
How Management Sees Testing. And the subtitle of that would be What Keith and Michael Meant to Say When They Talked About It. But it was, I'm, that's one of the chapters in the book that I'm happiest about, to be, uh, uh, of course, because I was so much involved with it and it wasn't one of the chapters I wrote. But it's a bit of work that I think, can both be pretty proud of.
I
So thank
am.
you for that.
I am very proud of that. And is there anywhere else you're going to be out and about? I mean, I'll put the links to the blog and the whole shaboo. But are you out and about? I think Eurostar is what there is there an AI star or something coming up? I thought I saw some flyer come through my LinkedIn about an
AI
online
Star.
thing.
Oh, well, there's going to be a thing in September, a one
Okay.
day thing. Um, but I'm not actually sure of the parameters of that. I will be visiting, so it seems, the Czech Republic
Okay.
in November. But it's summertime; nobody knows what's happening in the fall.
Right.
Uh, you know how decisions get made in uh, big companies. Everybody's away, and it's a long time before anything happens. And then, oh, we need a decision within 15 minutes.
Yes.
So there's a lot of hurrying up and waiting. But at least those are couple of things that are on the horizon for now. And an interesting thing that's come up lately is that public online classes for RST are in a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but there's some trial runs that we might be wanting to do in at some point in the future. So I guess
Okay.
the easiest thing is to watch this space
All right.
and this expression intentionally left blank.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate it. And we will catch up soon.
Been a pleasure. Good luck editing this.